The council chamber was huge. It floated in empty space between the stars built by alien races millions of years ago. Inside, creatures from hundreds of different worlds gathered to make decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Today they had agreed to listen to the humans, the newest species to discover faster than light travel. Ji-won walked slowly to the speaking platform in the center of the massive room. Her heart was beating fast. She had practiced her speech 100 times, but standing here in front of beings that had crossed the stars for thousands of years made her feel very small. She wore her best diplomatic uniform, and her hands shook just a little as she held her data tablet. Above her, the Velcran Overseer floated in the air. It looked like a being made entirely of glowing crystal, pulsing with different colors. The translation device in Ji-won's ear turned its strange sounds into words she could understand. The Overseer seemed amused by the human presence. Ji-won cleared her throat and began speaking. Her voice echoed in the enormous chamber. Honored members of the Galactic Council, humanity thanks you for this opportunity to address you today. We come before you with an important concern about galactic security. She tapped her tablet and holographic images appeared in the air around her. They showed mathematical equations, weapon designs, and simulation videos. We have carefully studied the Galactic Weapons Treaty. It covers plasma weapons, quantum destroyers, and dimensional cutters. But we notice something missing. There are no rules about kinetic weapons, what we humans call railguns. The Velcran Overseer made a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. Other council members joined in. The sound filled the chamber, making Ji-won's cheeks turn red. Young species, the Overseer said in a voice that sounded like music and thunder at the same time. We appreciate your concern, but throwing rocks at each other is very old technology. We stopped using such primitive weapons thousands of years ago. We have plasma weapons that burn hotter than stars. We have bombs that tear holes in space itself. Why would we worry about throwing metal? Standing next to Ji-won was Captain Minho, a military officer in his dress uniform. He stepped forward, his face serious. With respect, Overseer, I think there is a misunderstanding here. We are not talking about throwing rocks. A railgun uses powerful magnets to shoot a metal projectile at incredible speed. When something heavy moves fast enough, it carries enormous energy. Minho gestured to the holographic displays. A 5-kilogram piece of metal traveling at 4% of light speed hits with the power of a 50-megaton nuclear bomb. And unlike energy weapons, there is no beam to see coming, no charging time to detect. The projectile moves too fast to dodge. A new voice interrupted them. It came from the Therian War Master, a creature that looked like a giant insect with 4 mandibles clicking together. Human, the War Master said dismissively. We have shields, energy barriers that can stop the heat of a star's core. What damage could a simple metal bullet do against such protection? Ji-won felt frustration building inside her. She had brought charts, mathematical proofs, computer simulations of what would happen if a railgun hit a shielded ship. Please let us show you the calculations. A projectile with enough kinetic energy will punch through energy shields like they are not even there. The shields are designed to deflect or absorb energy beams, not solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Enough, the Velcran Overseer said. Its glow dimmed, which meant the conversation was over. We have heard your concern, humanity. We will add your presentation to our records. Perhaps in a few hundred years, when your species has developed more advanced technology, we can discuss this topic again. For now, this session is concluded. Holographic seals appeared in the air, making the decision official. The council members began to fade away as they disconnected from the meeting. Ji-won stood there feeling defeated. She had failed. The galaxy's leaders would not listen. Minho put his hand gently on her shoulder. You did everything you could, he said quietly. They think they know everything because they are old. But being old does not always mean being wise. Ji-won looked at the empty space where the council members had been. They will learn, she said, her voice sad. But I am afraid they will not learn from presentations and data. They will learn the hard way and people will die because of their pride. Minho nodded slowly. When that happens, we need to be ready. Not to say we told you so, but to help. To show them we warned them out of concern, not arrogance. They walked together out of the council chamber. Behind them, the holographic displays faded away, full of warnings that nobody had taken seriously. Ji-won thought about her home, Earth, where humans had learned about railguns decades ago. They had run the simulations, done the tests, understood the dangers. They had hoped to save the galaxy from making the same mistakes. But the galaxy was not ready to listen to the young species who had barely left their own solar system. The older races had fought wars for millennia with their advanced weapons. How could these primitive humans possibly know something they did not? As Jiwon and Minho's shuttle left the council station, heading back to human space, neither of them spoke. They both knew what would come next. Somewhere in the galaxy, someone would use a railgun in combat, and when they did, the results would shock everyone who had laughed at humanity's warning today. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council dismissed humanity's warning. During that time, tensions had been growing in the outer regions of known space. The Calrix sovereignty, an aggressive alien empire known for bullying weaker species, had been expanding into disputed territory. They threatened smaller colonies and took what they wanted by force. Lieutenant Commander Heejin sat at her station aboard the UES Indomitable, humanity's first deep space warship. The ship was not large compared to alien vessels. It measured only 300 meters from bow to stern, but it represented the best engineering that Earth could produce. Heejin's fingers moved across her tactical display, monitoring the empty space around them. Captain Daeho stood on the bridge, a coffee cup in his weathered hands. He had commanded naval ships on Earth's oceans before humanity reached the stars. Now he commanded humanity's presence in the frontier regions. His gray hair and calm demeanor made younger crew members feel safe even in dangerous situations. "Captain," Heejin called out, her voice urgent. "We are receiving a distress signal. It is from the Planari colony on Theta 9. They report 3 Calrix warships in orbit, threatening to bombard their cities unless they surrender all mining rights to the Calrix." Daeho set down his coffee cup carefully. He studied the tactical map that appeared in the air before him. 3 Calrix destroyers. Each one was twice the size of the Indomitable. Their hulls were covered with plasma cannons and missile launchers. According to the database, Calrix ships had heavy shields and thick armor. "How long until we can reach them?" Daeho asked. 20 minutes at maximum speed, sir," the helmsman replied. "Take us there." "Full speed." Daeho turned to the communications officer. "Send a message on all frequencies. Tell them we are UES Indomitable, and we will not allow attacks on civilian populations." The ship's engines hummed louder as they accelerated. Heejin watched her displays carefully, tracking the 3 Calrix vessels as they grew closer. The Planari were a peaceful species, farmers and miners with no military ships. Without help, they would have no choice but to surrender. The response to their message came quickly. A Calrix commander appeared on the main view screen. He looked like a large reptile standing upright, with scales and sharp teeth. His eyes were cold and full of contempt. "Human vessel," he hissed, "you are outmatched and outgunned. Turn around and leave, or we will destroy you and add your wreckage to our collection." Captain Daeho looked at the alien commander without any expression on his face. "I will give you one opportunity to avoid bloodshed. Leave this system immediately. Do not threaten civilian populations again." The Calrix commander's laugh sounded like rocks scraping together. "Foolish mammals. You have just signed your own death warrant. We will enjoy killing you." The communication cut off. On the tactical display, Heejin watched as all 3 Calrix ships turned toward the Indomitable. Their weapons powered up, glowing hot. Their shields shimmered to full strength, creating a visible barrier of energy around each hull. "Captain, they are moving to attack formation." "All weapons are hot. Should I raise our shields?" Daeho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "No, keep shields down. Charge the main railgun. Target the lead destroyer, center of mass." Heejin felt her heart race. The railgun was their primary weapon, running the entire length of the ship's spine. Powerful electromagnets lined a long tube. When activated, they would launch a solid slug of depleted uranium at tremendous velocity. "Yes, sir." "Railgun charging. Target is locked." The bridge crew worked in tense silence as the Calrix ships closed the distance. They were clearly confident. They had shields. They had numbers. What could one small human ship possibly do? "Railgun fully charged, Captain. Ready to fire on your command." Daeho took a deep breath. "Fire!" The ship shuddered slightly. There was no dramatic flash of light, no visible beam. The magnetic coils fired in perfect sequence, releasing the projectile at 4% of light speed. The slug crossed the distance to the lead Calrix destroyer in just 2 seconds. Heejin watched her screen closely. The Calrix ship's shields detected the incoming projectile and glowed brightly, trying to deflect it. For a brief moment she thought the shields might work. Then the slug punched through the energy barrier as if it were made of paper. The projectile entered through the destroyer's bow. It passed through the entire ship in less than a heartbeat and exited near the engines. But the damage was catastrophic. The kinetic energy transfer caused something called hydrostatic shock. The ship literally tore itself apart from the inside. Hull plates buckled and broke. Internal explosions rippled through every deck. Atmosphere vented into space in brilliant jets of frozen gas. Within seconds, the Calrix destroyer was a dead hulk, tumbling slowly in space. Complete silence fell over the communication channels. The two remaining Calrix ships had stopped moving. Hedgen checked her sensors twice, not believing what they showed. "Captain, the other two destroyers are breaking off. They are retreating. They just entered faster than light drive. They have fled the system." Deho nodded slowly, his face still calm. "Send full sensor recordings to Fleet Command and to the Galactic Council. Mark the transmission. First combat deployment of human kinetic weaponry. Include all data about projectile velocity, impact energy, and shield penetration." "Yes, sir," Hedgen replied. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared the data package. She had just witnessed something that would change galactic warfare forever. Captain Deho picked up his coffee cup again. "Helm, take us to the Planari colony. Let us make sure they are safe." He paused, looking at the debris field that had once been a Calrix warship. "And let us hope the galaxy finally decides to listen." The sensor recordings from the Theta 9 incident spread through galactic computer networks faster than anyone expected. Military analysts on hundreds of worlds watched the footage over and over again, studying every detail. They watched a human ship destroy a much larger Calrix destroyer with a single shot. They watched the shields fail. They watched the ship tear itself apart. Jiyon sat in her office aboard Unity Station, humanity's embassy in neutral space. She had been promoted to Chief Military Liaison, responsible for all military communications between humanity and other species. Her desk was now covered with communication requests. Everyone wanted to talk about the Railgun. She accepted a call from General Takrin of the Therian Concord. He was the same War Master who had dismissed humanity's warnings 6 months ago. Now his image appeared on her screen, and his 4 mandibles were held in a position that meant shame or regret. "Liaison Jiyon," he began, his multi-toned voice much quieter than before. "I owe your species an apology. I have personally reviewed all the data from the Theta 9 engagement. The energy calculations are deeply troubling." Jiyon kept her voice professional and calm. "Troubling is a gentle word for it, General. A 5-kilogram projectile moving at 4% of light speed carries the same energy as a 50-megaton fusion warhead. And unlike plasma beams or energy weapons, there is no visible beam to track, no charging signature to detect. By the time your sensors see it, the projectile has already hit you." Takrin's multiple eyes blinked one after another. "Your ship did not even activate defensive shields. The human vessel fought with shields down. Railguns do not require shields for protection," Jiyon explained patiently. "The projectile is fired before the enemy can react. Traditional energy shields are designed to handle energy weapons, beams of plasma or radiation. They are not built to stop solid matter moving at such extreme velocity. The kinetic energy simply overwhelms them. It is like trying to stop a bullet with a flashlight beam. We must convene an emergency session of the Weapons Review Council," Takrin said urgently. "If this technology spreads to hostile powers or pirate clans, the galaxy will become much more dangerous." "That is exactly what we tried to explain 6 months ago," Jiyon said gently. "But there is good news, General. Humanity has no interest in destabilizing galactic security. We will share our defensive countermeasures just as freely as we shared the warning about railguns." Takrin leaned closer to his camera. "Countermeasures? You have already developed defenses against your own weapons." "Of course we have. We have been studying railgun technology for decades. The key to defense is layered armor with empty spaces between the layers. When a projectile hits, it passes through so quickly that it cannot transfer all its energy to any single point. The empty spaces prevent the hydrostatic shock from propagating. Combined with point defense laser systems to destroy incoming slugs before they reach you, it becomes quite effective." "You will share these designs?" Takrin sounded surprised. "We will present complete specifications at the emergency council session. Anyone who wants them can have them free of charge." Jiyon smiled slightly. "We made a mistake by not offering solutions along with our warning. We will not make that mistake again." After the call ended, Jiyon allowed herself to lean back in her chair. Her assistant, Young Ho, entered the office carrying a digital tablet. He was a young man, fresh from the diplomatic academy, and his eyes were wide with excitement. "Ma'am, we are receiving formal requests for military exchange programs. 43 different species want to send officers to study human kinetic weapons doctrine." 43! More requests are coming in every hour. Ji-yeon took the tablet and scrolled through the list. There were species she recognized and some she had never heard of. All of them wanted to learn. "Approve all the requests," she said, "but make sure each exchange program includes mandatory education modules. I want them to learn about the Outer Space Treaty from Earth. I want them to understand kinetic weapon ethics and the laws of armed conflict. If we are going to teach the galaxy about this technology, we are going to do it responsibly." "Yes, ma'am," Young-ho said, making notes. "Should we prioritize certain species over others?" "No, everyone gets the same access to the same information. We are not playing favorites, and we are not creating advantages for allies over others. This is about galactic security, not politics." Ji-yeon stood and walked to her office window, looking out at the stars visible through the station's transparent hull. "Do you think they will really listen this time?" Young-ho asked quietly. Ji-yeon was silent for a moment. "Some will. The wise ones like General Takrin will understand that we are trying to help. Others will see this as humanity trying to gain influence or control. They will be suspicious of our motives." She turned to look at her assistant. "But it does not matter what they think of us. What matters is that we do the right thing. We introduced a dangerous weapon into galactic civilization. Now we have a responsibility to help everyone defend against it." Over the following weeks, human engineers and military instructors spread across Allied space. They visited shipyards and military academies. They taught alien engineers how to build layered armor. They showed weapons officers how point defense lasers could track and destroy incoming railgun slugs. They shared mathematical models and simulation software. The transformation was remarkable. Within months, the standard design for military vessels began to change. Smooth energy shields gave way to complex layered hulls. Point defense laser clusters appeared on every warship. Early warning sensor networks spread through important systems, designed to detect the electromagnetic signature of railgun tests. But not everyone was grateful. In a secure facility on the Calrix homeworld, far from human eyes, Strategic Commander Velroth studied the intelligence reports with cold calculation. He was older than the commander who had died at Theta 9, and much smarter. "Look at what the humans have accomplished," he said to his officers. They presented themselves as humble helpers, sharing their technology freely. But notice what they have really done. Every species now depends on human expertise for modern military defense. Every major power has human advisors in their shipyards and academies. The humans have made themselves indispensable. His tactical officer nodded, and with their monitoring networks in place, they will know immediately if anyone tries to develop kinetic weapons in secret. "Exactly," Velroth said. "The humans did not simply introduce a new weapon. They introduced dependence on human knowledge and human systems. Very clever." He smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Well played, humans. Well played indeed." Part 4. Pirates and Predators. Not everyone in the galaxy had good intentions. Far beyond the reach of the Galactic Council's laws, in the dark spaces between civilized systems, criminal organizations had been watching humanity's demonstration with great interest. Where others saw danger or responsibility, they saw opportunity. Aboard the pirate carrier Blood Prophet, Warlord Zelkin sat in his command throne watching the Theta 9 footage for perhaps the 100th time. He was a massive creature, cobbled together from cybernetic parts and genetic modifications from a dozen different species. His crew represented the worst criminals the galaxy had produced. Outcasts and murderers who cared nothing for laws or ethics. Simple, brutal, effective, Zelkin growled, his mechanical voice box rattling. "And the stupid humans are giving away all their secrets. Their educational programs are teaching everyone exactly how to build these weapons." His chief engineer, Prisk, was a Velcran who had been expelled from his people for war crimes. He manipulated holographic blueprints in the air, studying the railgun designs that human instructors were sharing across the galaxy. The basic principle is incredibly simple. Even our outdated shipyards can build crude versions. We will not match human precision or firing rates, but we do not need to. Against unarmed merchant ships, even a slow railgun will be devastating. Zelkin smiled, a horrifying expression on his modified face. Begin construction immediately. Retrofit all our strike ships with magnetic accelerators. The galaxy is about to learn that new weapons mean new opportunities. Within weeks, pirate attacks along the major trade routes increased dramatically. Merchant vessels that had felt safe behind their standard energy shields suddenly found themselves helpless. Crude railgun slugs tore through their defenses like they were nothing. Cargo ships were disabled and looted. Some crews were taken for ransom. Others were simply killed. Commander Yunji of the UES Sentinel received the distress call during what should have been a routine patrol. Her frigate was one of humanity's newer designs, smaller and faster than the Indomitable but equipped with the latest defensive systems. She was drinking tea when the urgent message came through, distorted by distance and interference. All vessels in the corridor, under attack. Pirate force with kinetic weapons. Shields are useless. Request immediate assistance. The message dissolved into static. Yunji set down her tea carefully, though her hands wanted to shake. Helm, plot fastest intercept course. Maximum speed. Communications, try to raise that merchant convoy and get their exact position. Course plotted, Commander. 18 minutes at full burn. Do it. Yunji stood and walked to the tactical station. Weapons, I want all point defense systems hot and ready. If these pirates have railguns, even crude ones, we need to be prepared. The Sentinel's engines flared bright as the ship accelerated. Yunji used the travel time to study what little information they had about pirate railgun capabilities. Intelligence suggested their weapons were much slower than human military models, with less accuracy and slower reload times. But against civilian ships with no armor, that hardly mattered. They arrived to find 3 pirate vessels circling the remains of a merchant convoy like sharks around wounded prey. 2 cargo ships were still intact but badly damaged, venting atmosphere and drifting helplessly. Debris floated everywhere, the scattered remains of a transport that had been completely destroyed. This is UES Sentinel to pirate vessels. Yunji transmitted on all frequencies. Power down your weapons immediately and prepare to be boarded. You will be taken into custody and transferred to the nearest council authority. This is your only warning. Zelkin's scarred face appeared on the communications screen, his cybernetic eye glowing red. Ah, the noble humans coming to save the weak. How touching. We have your precious railguns now, little mammals. You are not special anymore. You are not the only ones with this technology. Yunji kept her voice calm and professional. You have crude magnetic accelerators built from stolen plans. There is a significant difference. I am giving you one last chance. Power down and surrender. The pirates' response was to open fire. 3 railgun slugs launched from the pirate vessels, moving toward the Sentinel at much slower velocity than military-grade weapons, but still dangerous. Point defense systems. Engage targets, Yunji ordered calmly. The Sentinel's defensive lasers had been designed specifically for this scenario. High-powered beams tracked the incoming projectiles with computer-guided precision. The lasers fired, their invisible beams reaching out across thousands of kilometers. Each pirate slug was struck and vaporized hundreds of kilometers away from the Sentinel, turned into clouds of superheated gas long before they could become a threat. Return fire. 3 targets, 3 shots. Fire when ready. The Sentinel's railgun was a precision instrument compared to the pirate weapons. It fired 3 times in rapid succession, each shot calculated perfectly for velocity, trajectory, and timing. The pirate vessels had been designed for attacking helpless merchants, not fighting military ships. They had no layered armor, no sophisticated point defense systems, no tactical training. The first pirate ship took a hit directly through its engine section. The slug punched clean through and the ship went dark, all power failing instantly. The second projectile hit another pirate vessel in the command section. The third shot struck the Blood Prophet itself, Zelkin's carrier, tearing through its weapon batteries. All 3 pirate vessels disabled, Commander, the tactical officer reported. They are no longer a threat. Good. Begin rescue operations for the merchant convoy survivors. Contact the nearest council patrol and request they take custody of the pirates. Yunji opened a channel to Fleet Command back at Unity Station. Commander Unji to Human Fleet Command. We have engaged and neutralized a pirate force using kinetic weapons. Confirm that hostile forces now possess railgun technology, though primitive versions. I recommend we accelerate the defensive technology sharing program with all allied species. Admiral Sora's voice came back immediately, tight with concern. Understood, Commander. We knew this day would come eventually. You cannot keep any technology secret forever. Time to move to Phase 2 of our Galactic Security Initiative. We taught them about the weapon. Now we teach them how to defend against it, and we teach them how to police their own space. Yunji watched as rescue shuttles launched toward the damaged merchant ships. She thought about how quickly things had changed. 6 months ago, humanity had been the new species that nobody took seriously. Now they were training the galaxy's defenders and hunting the galaxy's predators. "Commander," her communications officer called out. "We are receiving thank you messages from the merchant convoy. They are asking if all human ships are this well equipped." Yunji smiled slightly. "Tell them yes, and tell them humanity is working to make sure all friendly vessels will be this well equipped soon. Nobody should have to face pirates alone." The Galactic Council's emergency session filled every seat in Unity Station's grand chamber. Representatives from over 200 species attended, either in person or through holographic projection. The mood was tense, even fearful. In the 6 months since the Theta 9 incident, kinetic weapons had transformed from a dismissed curiosity into a galaxy-changing threat. Jiwan, now promoted to senior ambassador, stood before the assembly once again. The last time she had addressed this council, they had laughed at her warnings. Now their attention was absolute. Every representative watched her with serious expressions. Nobody was laughing anymore. "Members of the council," Jiwan began, her voice steady and clear. "Humanity takes full responsibility for introducing this destabilizing technology into galactic affairs. We were naive. We thought a simple warning would be enough. We should have offered complete solutions from the very beginning. For that failure, we apologize." The Velcran overseer, whose crystalline form seemed less bright than before, spoke first. "Your species opened a very dangerous door, Ambassador. How do you propose we close it again?" Jiwan took a breath before answering. "We do not close it, Overseer. That is impossible now. The knowledge exists and cannot be forgotten. Pirates have railguns. Hostile powers are developing them. We cannot put this technology back in a box. Instead, we must adapt. We must make sure that defenders have every advantage over attackers." She gestured, and holographic displays filled the air around her, showing detailed technical specifications. Humanity is prepared to share, completely freely and without any restrictions, every defensive measure we have developed. We will provide specifications for layered armor designs. We will share our point defense laser systems. We will give you our predictive targeting algorithms and our early warning sensor network designs. The Therian War Master Takrin, who had once dismissed humanity's concerns, spoke carefully. "And what does humanity want in return for this generosity?" "Nothing," Jiwan stated firmly. "This is not a negotiation or a trade agreement. This is an apology. We introduced a weapon without fully considering the consequences. The absolute least we can do is help you defend against it. We ask for nothing in return except your willingness to use these technologies responsibly." A murmur rippled through the chamber. In galactic politics, nothing was ever offered without expecting something back. The representatives looked at each other with confusion and suspicion. Hyunwoo, humanity's chief scientist and engineering director, stepped forward. He was younger than Jiwan, with an enthusiastic manner that made complex topics seem simple. "Additionally, we propose creating an international monitoring system. When railguns are tested, they produce very distinctive electromagnetic signatures. We can build a sensor network that detects anyone attempting to develop these weapons in secret. This will help enforce treaty compliance and give us early warning of potential threats." Over the months that followed, the galaxy underwent its most dramatic military transformation in thousands of years. Human engineering teams traveled to hundreds of worlds, working alongside alien engineers and military officers. They retrofitted warships, rebuilt space stations, and redesigned defensive doctrines. The changes were visible everywhere. Ships that once relied purely on energy shields now sported complex layered hulls with empty spaces between armor plates. Clusters of point defense lasers appeared on every military vessel and important civilian station. New sensor networks spread through critical systems, watching constantly for the telltale signs of railgun development or testing. Borum was one of the lead engineers working on the Therian homeworld. She spent her days in their massive orbital shipyards, teaching Therian workers how to install humanity's defensive systems. The work was exhausting but satisfying. "The key is the spacing between armor layers," she explained to a group of Therian engineers, using a holographic model to demonstrate. "When the projectile passes through, it creates a pressure wave. If the armor is solid, that wave propagates and tears the ship apart from inside. But with empty space between layers, the wave dissipates. The projectile wastes its energy punching through multiple separate barriers instead of destroying everything at once. One of the Therians clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. And the point defense lasers? They track incoming projectiles and destroy them before impact. The lasers fire at computer-controlled speeds, much faster than any biological being could react. Even a railgun slug moving at relativistic speeds can be targeted if you detect it early enough. Borum pulled up another display. The sensor network gives us that early detection. We can see a railgun being fired from light seconds away. The Therian engineer studied the designs carefully. Your species has thought about this deeply. These are not hastily designed solutions. You have been preparing for kinetic warfare for a long time. Borum nodded. Humans have been theorizing about space combat since before we left Earth. We studied every possibility, every type of weapon that physics allows. Railguns were always one of our primary concerns. We are simply sharing decades of research and development. But not everyone saw humanity's actions in a positive light. In secure facilities far from human observation, some species viewed the changes with suspicion and calculation. On the Calrix's homeworld, Strategic Commander Velroth reviewed intelligence reports in his private office. Unlike the commander who had died at Theta 9, Velroth was patient and thoughtful. He understood that true power came not from strength alone, but from understanding and manipulation. Look at the pattern, he told his senior officers, displaying galactic maps on his screens. Humans are now present in shipyards across 200 systems. They have military advisors in every major fleet academy. Their sensor networks monitor weapons development everywhere. They present this as generous assistance, but notice the result. His tactical officer Norvex studied the maps carefully. Every species now depends on human expertise for modern defense. And with their monitoring networks operational, humanity will know immediately if anyone attempts to develop kinetic weapons without their knowledge. Precisely, Velroth said. The humans did not simply introduce a weapon to galactic civilization. They introduced strategic dependence on human technology and human knowledge. Every major power now relies on them for security against the very threat they created. He leaned back in his chair, a slight smile on his reptilian face. It is actually quite brilliant. Whether they intended it or not, humanity has made itself indispensable to galactic security. They cannot be ignored or dismissed anymore. They have become essential. Norvex clicked his claws together nervously. Should we resist this human influence? Velroth considered the question. No, not yet. We will accept their defensive technology and their training. We will learn everything they are willing to teach. But we will also watch and wait. Humanity has shown itself to be more clever than we initially believed. That makes them either valuable allies or dangerous enemies. Time will reveal which they truly are. Back on Unity Station, Jiwan stood in her office looking at status reports from across the galaxy. The defensive upgrades were proceeding ahead of schedule. Pirate attacks had decreased as more ships gained proper defenses. The galaxy was adapting to the new reality of kinetic warfare. Young-Ho entered with the latest update. Ambassador, we have received formal thank you messages from 73 different governments. They are expressing gratitude for humanity's assistance and generosity. Jiwan smiled slightly, but her eyes were tired. That is good to hear. But I suspect some species are thankful, while others are merely being polite. Not everyone trusts our motives. Does that bother you? No, trust must be earned over time. We introduced a dangerous weapon. Now we are helping to mitigate that danger. Actions will prove our intentions better than words ever could. She turned to look out at the stars. We are playing a long game, Young-Ho. Building relationships and demonstrating responsibility. Future generations will judge whether we succeeded. 8 months had passed since the incident at Theta 9. The Calrix sovereignty had been unusually quiet during that time, which made human intelligence officers nervous. Silence from an aggressive empire usually meant they were planning something significant. Admiral Sora stood in the Fleet Command Center aboard Unity Station when the alerts began flooding in. She was an experienced officer, gray-haired and steady, someone who had earned her rank through decades of service. Now her screens were lighting, up with warnings faster than she could process them. Multiple contacts emerging from faster-than-light travel, her tactical officer reported, his voice rising with urgency. Calrix signature confirmed. Locations are spread across our entire border region. Count is 30 ships. No, 50 ships now. Admiral, this is a full-scale invasion force. Sora's jaw tightened. She had known this was coming eventually. The Calrics had been humiliated at Theta 9. They would not let that stand without a response. Sound general alert. Activate all defensive protocols. Get me a direct line to all our ship commanders in the border sectors. The Calrics had learned from their defeat. Their fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel already firing their weapons. They had built their own railguns, crude copies of human designs, but effective enough for their purposes. Magnetic slugs streaked across space toward human defensive installations along the frontier. But the Calrics had also learned something else, something that would prove to be their critical mistake. They believed they now understood kinetic warfare. They thought they had adapted to humanity's tactics. Captain Deho, now commanding the carrier Resolute, watched the Calrics' fleet's approach on his tactical displays. His ship was much larger than the Indomitable had been, designed to coordinate multiple smaller vessels in fleet combat. Around him, 11 other human warships maintained formation, awaiting orders. "Sir, the Calrics have numerical superiority," his tactical officer Soman reported. 50 of their warships against our 12. Their weapons are hot, and they are advancing in standard battle formation. Deho studied the tactical map carefully, his experienced eyes reading the patterns in the Calrics' approach. They have studied our previous engagements. They have built railguns and improved their shields. They think they understand kinetic combat now. He smiled slightly, but it was not a pleasant expression. They are wrong. Launch all fighter squadrons. Humanity's space fighters were small, fast vessels carrying single railguns each. They launched from the Resolute's bays in perfectly coordinated flights, spreading out into a wide formation. "Sir, the Calrics are maintaining their advance. They expect us to either flee or meet them head-on." "Then we will disappoint them," Deho said calmly. "All ships, execute dispersal pattern Delta 7. Do not engage directly. I want wide separation, maximum evasive speed." The human fleet scattered. Each ship followed a precisely calculated vector, spreading apart in 3 dimensions. The Calrics, expecting a traditional naval engagement like they had fought for centuries, pursued. Their larger, heavier ships accelerated toward what they thought were retreating enemies. "Maintain current headings for exactly 12 seconds, Deho ordered, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. He was counting heartbeats, calculating trajectories in his head. "Weapons. I want firing solutions for empty space, not enemy ships. Calculate where each Calrics vessel will be in exactly 5 seconds from firing moment." Somin looked confused for a moment, then understanding dawned on her face. "Predictive firing pattern. You are not shooting where they are, but where they will be." "Exactly. The Calrics think in terms of aiming at targets, but kinetic warfare is not about aiming. It is about physics, geometry, and prediction." Deho watched the countdown timer. "All ships fire on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark, every." Human ship fired simultaneously, but none of them aimed at the Calrics vessels. Instead, they launched railgun slugs at empty points in space, calculated positions where the Calric ships would be in 5.2 seconds based on their current speed and trajectory. The Calric's commander realized what was happening too late. At their velocity, changing course quickly was impossible. Physics and inertia carried them forward, directly into the paths of projectiles they had never even seen being fired. 8 Calric's destroyers died in that first coordinated volley. Railgun slugs moving at a significant fraction of light speed struck them with devastating precision. Shields that had been upgraded after studying human tactics proved inadequate. The kinetic energy punched through, causing the same catastrophic damage that had destroyed the first Calric ship at Theta 9. "Calric's formation is breaking apart," Soman reported. "Their command ship is still advancing, though. Central heavy destroyer, twice the size of the others. Target it. Full salvo, all available ships," Deho ordered. The Resolute's main railgun fired, joined by projectiles from 4 other human vessels. 5 slugs converged on the Calric's flagship from different angles. The ship's captain tried desperately to maneuver, but capital ships cannot dodge like fighters. 3 projectiles missed, their trajectories calculated for the flagship's original course. but two found their target. The first slug penetrated the flagship's engines, causing a reactor containment breach. The second struck near the command section. The massive Calrix vessel shuddered, explosions rippling across its hull. Emergency escape pods began launching as the crew abandoned ship. The rest of the Calrix fleet broke. Without their command structure and facing an enemy that seemed to predict their every move, the surviving ships fled back into faster-than-light drive, retreating toward their own territory. Deho let out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Damage report. Minor hits on 3 of our ships, sir. Shields held, no casualties. Hours later, Deho stood before a holographic conference of Allied military commanders. Leaders from dozens of species listened as he explained what had happened. The Calrix learned to build railguns, Deho said, his voice patient and professional. But they did not learn to think kinetically. They treated railguns as just another type of gun, faster and more powerful, but fundamentally the same as their plasma cannons. They aimed at where ships were, not where ships would be. General Takran, attending via hologram, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You are saying the weapon itself is only as dangerous as the tactical doctrine behind it. Exactly, General. Every railgun shot is a physics problem. You must calculate velocity, trajectory, enemy movement, prediction algorithms. You are not shooting at a target. You are shooting at a point in 4-dimensional space-time. It is 3-dimensional chess played at relativistic speeds. A Velcron admiral spoke up, his crystalline form pulsing with confusion. Then the technology alone does not grant superiority. Understanding and training are equally important. More important, actually, Deho confirmed. Any species can build a magnetic accelerator, but mastering its use requires a completely different way of thinking about combat. That is why humanity's next contribution to galactic security will be our tactical training programs. We will teach anyone willing to learn not just how to build railguns or defend against them, but how to think in kinetic terms. Jion, observing the conference from Unity Station, smiled at Deho's words. This was exactly the approach humanity had been planning. Not domination through superior weapons, but cooperation through superior understanding. They would teach the galaxy to see warfare through a new lens, one where precision and calculation mattered more than raw power. After the conference ended, she received a private message from Admiral Sora. The Calrix learned their lesson today, but I suspect they will not be the last to test us. Other species will want to see if they can master kinetic warfare better than we can. Let them try, Jion replied. Every test gives us another opportunity to teach, and every lesson learned brings the galaxy closer to stability. We may have introduced a dangerous weapon, but we are also introducing a better way to think about security and defense. 2 years had passed since Ambassador Jiwan first stood before the Galactic Council to warn them about railguns. The galaxy had changed dramatically in that time, transformed by technology and the new ways of thinking that came with it. The council chamber looked different now. Every representative sat behind advanced consoles displaying real-time data from the kinetic weapons monitoring network. The system stretched across thousands of star systems, constantly watching for signs of illegal weapons development or treaty violations. It was a visible reminder of how completely humanity's technology had been integrated into galactic society. Jiwan stood before the assembly again, older now and more confident. She no longer felt like the nervous young diplomat who had been laughed at 2 years ago. She had earned respect through actions, not words. Her uniform now carried additional decorations, honors from multiple species recognizing humanity's contributions to galactic security. Members of the Council, she began, her voice clear and steady. I am pleased to report that the Kinetic Weapons Treaty has now been ratified by 89% of all recognized governments. The remaining 11% are being brought into compliance through diplomatic channels and educational programs. No military force has been necessary. The Velcran Overseer's crystalline form glowed with approval. Its colors were brighter than they had been in recent years, a sign of contentment. Humanity has proven itself a responsible member of galactic civilization. Your species took a dangerous technology, shared it transparently, provided defensive countermeasures freely, and helped us all adapt. The galaxy is safer today because of your actions. G1 felt warmth at the praise but remained humble. With respect, Overseer, the galaxy is safer because we all work together. Humanity provided the catalyst and the initial knowledge, but every species represented here contributed to the solution. This was a collective achievement, not a human one. General Takrin spoke next, his 4 mandibles held in a position that indicated deep respect. The Therian Conquered wishes to make a formal proposal. We believe humanity has more than earned a permanent seat on the Galactic Security Council. Such positions are traditionally reserved for species with thousands of years of spacefaring history. But humanity has demonstrated wisdom that transcends age. Jiwan felt the weight of that offer settle on her shoulders. A Security Council seat meant humanity would have a direct voice in galactic military policy, in decisions that affected billions of lives across hundreds of worlds. It was a responsibility that could not be taken lightly. We accept, Jiwan said after a moment of consideration. But we accept with full awareness that we are still learning. Humanity may have advanced technology in certain areas, but we are young compared to most species here. We hope to learn as much as we teach. We will bring our perspective, but we will also listen carefully to wisdom earned over millennia. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in Galactic Council history, a species less than 5 years into faster-than-light travel would sit on the Security Council. Some saw it as recognition of humanity's contributions. Others saw it as the galaxy's acknowledgement that youth and innovation mattered as much as age and tradition. Later that day, G1 stood at an observation deck overlooking the galactic core. The view was spectacular, countless stars forming a river of light across the darkness. Admiral Minho joined her, his uniform also bearing new decorations. He had been with her since the beginning, since that first dismissive council session. Do you think they truly understand what happened? Minho asked quietly, looking out at the stars. Understand what specifically? That we did not just introduce railguns to the galaxy. We introduced a philosophy, a way of thinking. Minho crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. The idea that sometimes the simplest solution, applied with precision and deep understanding, is more effective than the most advanced technology. Jiwan smiled. Some of them understand. Takrin knows, the Overseer suspects, but most species are still thinking in terms of who has the biggest weapon, the most powerful ship, the strongest shields. And humanity? We think differently, Jiwan said. We think in terms of who has the best aim, the deepest understanding, the most precise application of force. That has always been our strength, not that we build the most powerful weapons, but that we understand how to use force precisely, with purpose and restraint. Minho nodded slowly. The galaxy spent thousands of years developing weapons that could destroy entire planets. We showed them weapons that could target a specific ship, a specific section of that ship, without any collateral damage beyond the intended target. Precision over power, Jiwan agreed. That is the real lesson, though I doubt most species consciously realize it yet. The railgun was just the teaching tool. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, human instructors were teaching alien officers how to calculate trajectories and think in kinetic terms. Human engineers were helping to retrofit defense systems and build monitoring networks. Human diplomats were negotiating treaties and building relationships. I wonder what we will teach them next, Minho said eventually. Jiwan considered the question carefully. Whatever it is, we need to remember the lesson we learned from the railguns. Share the knowledge completely. Share the defensive countermeasures immediately. Share the responsibility always. We are part of something much bigger than just humanity now. In the years that followed, railguns became standard weapons across the galaxy, but more importantly, humanity's doctrine of proportional response and precision engagement spread with them. Military academies on hundreds of worlds taught not just the mathematics of kinetic warfare, but the ethics of restraint. Young officers of every species learned from human instructors who emphasized that knowing when not to shoot was as important as knowing how to aim. The crude weapon that the galaxy had initially dismissed became the foundation for a new understanding of warfare. Not warfare focused purely on destruction, but warfare that valued precision, discrimination, and responsibility. Wars still happened. Conflicts were still fought, but they were fought with greater care for minimizing harm to innocents and limiting collateral damage. In the military academy on Unity Station, a young Therian officer named Korvek studied tactical displays showing historical engagements. His human instructor, Commander Sunmi, stood beside him, pointing out key moments in various battles. "Notice the pattern," Sunmi said. "In every successful engagement, the victorious force was not necessarily the one with more ships or heavier weapons. It was the force that understood the physics better, that predicted enemy movements more accurately, that thought several steps ahead." Corvex clicked his mandibles, a gesture of understanding. "Warfare has become more intellectual, less about brute strength." "Warfare was always intellectual," Sunmi corrected gently. "Humans just approached it from a different angle than most species. We had to. For most of our history, we did not have energy shields or plasma cannons. We had to make simple weapons incredibly effective through superior tactics and precise application. And now you teach the galaxy your approach. We share what we have learned, yes. But we also learn from every species we teach. The Velcrans have shown us new approaches to sensor networks. The Therians have taught us formation tactics we never considered. This is not humans teaching the galaxy. This is the galaxy teaching itself, with humanity as one voice among many back on Earth." In a small museum dedicated to human space exploration history, a simple display showed humanity's first railgun test from decades earlier. Visitors could watch the original footage of a metal slug being accelerated to high speeds in a laboratory. The placard next to it read, "This simple weapon changed galactic civilization not because it was powerful, but because it made us think differently. It reminded the galaxy that wisdom comes not from age but from perspective, that sometimes the answer is not more advanced technology, but better understanding of the technology we already have, and that the greatest strength is not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to." Ambassador G1, now elderly and preparing to retire, visited that museum during a trip to Earth. She stood before the railgun display for a long time, remembering that day in the council chamber when nobody had taken her seriously. A young child tugged on her sleeve. "Excuse me, are you Ambassador G1? The one from the history books?" G1 smiled down at the child. "I am. Though the history books probably make me sound more impressive than I actually was. You warned the galaxy about the danger and they did not listen. That must have been scary." "It was frustrating more than scary," G1 admitted. "But the galaxy did listen eventually. And when they did, we all worked together to make things better. That is the important part. Not that we were right and they were wrong, but that we all learned and grew together." The child thought about this. "My teacher says humans are good at making simple things work really well." G1 laughed. "Your teacher is wise. Yes, that is what we try to do. Make simple solutions work excellently through understanding and precision. It is a good approach to many problems, not just weapons." As G1 left the museum and looked up at the evening sky, she thought about everything that had changed in the past years.